So how did the LSU running game break out against South Carolina? Brian Kelly explains. You'll hear it next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So Brian Kelly, as he does every Monday, met with reporters to recap LSU's win over South Carolina and start to preview the game against Vanderbilt. And first question out the chute, you might imagine, was about LSU's running game. Because Saturday night against South Carolina, it was very clear that LSU's running game had, in fact, improved. So let's start there by objectively acknowledging that the LSU running game up until this point in the season had been very bad and is now, after Saturday, or has on Saturday, improved. Just for some context, LSU presently, after the game against South Carolina, still is 113th in the country in rushing offense at 115 yards per game. That is objectively very bad. You are in the bottom 30 in the country, just actually the bottom 20 in the country in rushing offense. When you look at LSU's rushing output by game this season, 108 against Clemson. Now, that felt at the time like it was a good day because remember, Clemson going into that game, we all thought elite defensive front, couple of future first-round picks. And even though LSU ran for just 108 yards, they did it on 31 carries. So there was a commitment. Remember that? Remember we've talked about this. They threw it 39 times, ran it 31. There was at least a commitment to running the football, and LSU possessed the ball for 37 minutes in that game. So at that point, we didn't really know or feel the running game was bad. LSU goes out against Louisiana Tech, and they rush for 128 yards against a G6 opponent. But they ran 34 times, threw it 41, ran it 34. Again, there was more of an attempt at balance here at this point, and they averaged just under 4 yards a carry. Then LSU played Florida. And Florida, again, another very good defensive front, and that was the game where Brian Kelly had the dust up afterwards because the offense, despite getting 5 turnovers from the defense, really struggled to move the football. And LSU finished with 27 pass attempts, 25 rush attempts. Again, balance, but Florida dominated time of possession with 37 minutes and 46 seconds, and LSU ran it for 3.8 yards per carry. And remember, of those 96 rushing yards, 51 of them came on Caden Durham's long run at the end of the game to seal it for LSU. So at this point, you're feeling like, okay, there's struggles. And then they go out against Southeastern Louisiana, and LSU ran for 135 yards, 3.9 a carry. Again, every game, they're right at that 3.8, 3.9 yard per carry. And so you're thinking, man, look, 43 passes, 35 rushing attempts. But again, they're still attempting balance. And at that point, I think everything could still be explained because we didn't quite know yet at that point the struggles that Clemson or Florida would have. And I still think those defensive fronts are very good. But really, when you went to Ole Miss, this is where the glaring weakness, just the light shone upon it. You ran for 57 yards. But as we've talked plenty, there wasn't even an attempt at balance. You threw it 34 times. You ran it 22 times, 22 rushes for 57 yards, an average of 2.6 yards per carry. And that was against Ole Miss, which was and still is at the bottom of the SEC in run defense. So the fact that you couldn't get going against a bad run defense shows both lack of ability and lack of willingness to run. Well, the thing that very clearly changed against South Carolina coming out of the bye, used several different formations. We saw Jack Pyburn at fullback. We saw Bauer Sharp at fullback. We saw Malachi Lane at fullback. We saw some 14 personnel, which is 1 running back, 4 tight ends. As a matter of fact, the touchdown pass to Trey'Dez Green was in 14 personnel. So they did show different looks to try to open up a little bit of the running game. And of course, the biggest thing was the commitment to running the football. Against South Carolina, LSU threw the ball 33 times. They ran it 30 times, 30 rushing attempts, 166 yards. You averaged just under 6 yards a carry, and you had some big plays in that game. So Brian Kelly was asked on Monday, it was the first question out the chute, how did you get the run game going against South Carolina?
Yeah, I think it's just been an evolution. I think it starts with getting off the ball. I think it starts with, aiming points for our offensive line. A lot of the things that take time to come together is starting to come to fruition. And so the run game, as I said, it's got to be central to our overall offensive efficiency, but it's got to show itself in other areas as well. So we've got some work to do.
A lot of people have brought up that Brian Kelly had the play sheet in his hand on the headset Saturday night against South Carolina. I want to be very clear. I'm perfectly fine with that. There were times in the Miles era when we saw Les Miles with the play sheet, and that spelled danger because you wanted Les Miles to remove himself because all he was doing was being ultra conservative and wanting to run the football. And sometimes that was hindering LSU's offensive ability. I think the opposite is true here. If Brian Kelly, who is the most experienced play caller on the LSU staff, wants to get involved in play call and scheming in game, by all means, do it. Clearly, it worked against South Carolina. You saw more of an attempt at balance, and that attempt at balance paid dividends in the ability to run the football. Now, Brian Kelly has talked plenty. Some of it's play call, some of it's commitment to running, some of it's the backs having good vision, sticking with it, and some of it, of course, is on the offensive line as well. But what you heard him say there was about the offensive line, firing out into the stances and so on. And what was really interesting is that he elaborated a bit more on the development of this offensive line. And I know we've talked about it if you're an everydayer, you've heard me say this a ton, but you are talking about 5 new offensive linemen, and 5 have to play as one. And there's been a lot of hesitancy. And Brian Kelly's even used the word robotic at times. It needed to become more fluid, needs to become more fluid where guys are thinking less. And part of that is what we talked about last week. Call the play, run the play, let guys go be athletic, get out of the stance and get into other people's pads and move bodies. And I think that was a big part of it. And Brian Kelly this will make a lot of sense when he was asked about how the offensive line has developed through the first half of the season.
We're at the point now where we can talk about sustaining blocks, which is simply a determination and a want to and a will. And we got to get to that, because if we sustain 1 or 2 blocks, we had 6 runs of 15 yards or more. That's a really good start. We could have had 3 or 4 that were of 50 or more. And we just need to sustain. I couldn't get to sustaining blocks if I couldn't get off the ball. Now we're getting off the ball. Now we got to sustain blocks. We got to hold on to those blocks. It can't just be contact and that's it, because those guys are folding back in and making plays. So we're at a next stage if we continue to do what we're doing, which puts us in a really good place.
So the next stage, 6 runs of 15 yards or more. So it's getting off the ball, getting into blocks, and now it's sustaining blocks. That's development. You hear me say it often, but teams are allowed to improve. A season it's a marathon, and it is an evolution over the course of 12 regular season games and hopefully 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 games for this LSU team. But you're seeing this offensive line improve. Now, something Brian Kelly did mention a week ago was the possibility of an offensive line shuffle. And we've talked about it a lot here. And notably, I've talked a lot about Karius Kern because I think he's one of your 5 best linemen and wanting to see Kern find a way in there. Well, some of you asked me the question about a different player on the offensive line moving positions. And I thought it was so interesting that I actually asked Brian Kelly in his Monday press conference about the possibility of that switch. You'll hear his answer when we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is exciting. But getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe your serveware needs a refresh, or the guest room could use new bedding. Wayfair has everything you need to get your home holiday ready. From Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, and outdoor inflatables, it's your one-stop shop for every room in the house. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every style and budget. And with free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. Matter of fact, when you look at this office, the desk I'm sitting at, we got from Wayfair. The chair I'm sitting at, we got from Wayfair. The rug, if you can see it behind me, we got from Wayfair. Our outdoor patio furniture by our pool, we got it from Wayfair. Get organized, refreshed, and ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every home, every style. And we're brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Again, visit FanDuel.com today to download the app to get started. So Brian Kelly noticed an obvious improvement in the running game and talked a little bit about some of the reasons potentially why. He also noted that this was among the best games that they've seen, especially on the interior of the offensive line.
Our guard and center play was the best it's been all year. And it happens in the triangle. That's where it has to happen. That group right there has got to get off the ball and get you some initial movement. And that's where we were better.
Okay, so remember, your guard and center play is with Braylon Moore at center, and then your guards were Cohen Eccles with Paul Mabenga out, and Josh Thompson, as he has been at right guard for the entire season. So when you look at the blocking grades for this game, just run block, Josh Thompson was your highest graded, Cohen Eccles was next, and then Braylon Moore was third. That's your two guards and your center. So Brian Kelly's on point there. If you look at your run blocking grades from your tackles, Tyree Adams and Weston Davis were at the bottom of the list. Tyree Adams at 56, Weston Davis at 44. So again, Tyree Adams at 53, Weston Davis at 51 in run block. Okay. So again, that holds what Brian Kelly was saying there. Your two guards and your center were the highest rated run blockers on the team. Let's get pass blocking. Highest graded pass blocker, Braylon Moore, your center. Josh Thompson, your next highest graded offensive lineman at 62. Braylon Moore is at an 80, by the way. Josh Thompson at a 62. But then Tyree Adams at a 57. Weston Davis at a 29, Cohen Eccles at a 24. So Cohen Eccles actually had a pretty miserable day pass blocking, according to Pro Football Focus. But the run blocking, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about the ability to run block and get going in the running game. Your three highest graded players were your two guards and your center. So Brian Kelly's not wrong in that assessment. Again, we talk about PFF sometimes. It's not the metric, it's a metric. And sometimes that can confirm or disconfirm the eye test. Brian Kelly's telling you the center and the two guards was the best they played all year. Well, that's sort of evidence of it. They were your highest graded blockers in the run game on Saturday. Now, the other part of this that is interesting is, a week ago, Brian Kelly talked about what it's taken in the past for him to shuffle on the offensive line, which we've seen him do. Not only at Notre Dame, but he did it obviously in his first year in Baton Rouge. Remember, Will Campbell started every game at left tackle as a true freshman, but Emory Jones didn't go in until the third game. In the first game against Florida State, Garrett Dellinger started at center. It was a disaster. They put in Charles Turner. Dellinger moved to guard. Remember, at the beginning of the season, Miles Frazier was a tackle. When they started Emory Jones, they moved Frazier into guard, and they stayed. So he shuffled that line within that first month of his time of his first season in Baton Rouge. So what would it take to do that? Now, it is important to note that Josh Thompson, who's one of the transfers that LSU got on the offensive line, of course, Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech, Josh Thompson from Northwestern. Thompson a year ago played right guard at Northwestern, but 2 years ago, he played every game at right tackle. So you have an experienced veteran player, a fifth-year offensive lineman who has started every game at right guard for you so far this season, but has been as a fifth-year player who has been a starter at right tackle. So when it's very clear that Weston Davis has been your weak link, and I'm not trying to pick on Weston Davis. I think this is just something that we can all be very honest with each other and agree upon. And if you want something that is an objective metric, like let's look at the PFF grades, right? Where when you look at just run blocking, Weston Davis is the lowest graded player on the team with a run blocking grade of 41. Okay. So if you want to look at pass blocking grade, Weston Davis's pass blocking grade is a 45. That is the lowest of your offensive linemen. So he is your lowest graded offensive. There's no objective, subjective to eye test. It's all there. Weston Davis is a former 5-star. He's a redshirt freshman. He's playing for the first time. He has tremendous upside, but he is struggling. Like, that is an objective truth. We're not picking on the kid, the young guy. It's just a truth. He is struggling. So would it make sense potentially to move an experienced guy in Josh Thompson, a right tackle, and maybe put Karius Kern at guard or DJ Chester at guard, a guy who started 13 games a year ago? You've got options maybe to remedy that. Well, I asked Brian Kelly point blank if they considered moving Josh Thompson to right guard, and his answer was interesting.
We did, but we're willing to live with some mistakes out at right tackle because we think his future is so bright. So when you go into that whole process of thinking about it, do you thwart his growth of what he needs to see every day? He was really good against six and pass protection, really good. That guy is outstanding. He's as good as I've seen. He is so quick. He's got a power move. He's got an edge move, and he did a great job. We've got to get him better in the run game. And that's where, at times, you want to put Josh out there. But we're going to live with him. And I'm proud of him. He's growing. He's learning this game. And that's a big part of this. You know, O-line awareness, O-line instincts, some have it, some don't. Some you got to really give them reps. And that's what this is about. He needs to play.
You know, I can very much appreciate that answer. And there's truth to that. For some guys to improve, they have to play. You have to play to get the experience, to eventually get through it and be better on the other side. And so you ask yourself, go back to the example of Emory Jones as a freshman. And Brian Kelly talked about that, made the comp with Karius Kern. So as to say, the ceiling's so high, you're going to live with mistakes because the upside, the potential is so good. We'll live with some of the mistakes because he's going to be fast and physical and aggressive and talented and athletic. He's going to make plays. And I'm good with that. But I'm good with getting guys experience and development, unless if they're costing your team. And specifically if they're costing your team and you have a better option. And maybe you do here. I mean, you heard Brian Kelly say where he's got to improve in run block. That's why you'd love to have Josh out there. Because if you put Josh Thompson at right tackle, you get one of your best run blocking offensive line at right tackle. And then you could put Chester or Kern in at right guard. And now you're better. You're better objectively on the offensive line. But they love Weston Davis's athleticism and his potential and upside. So the hope is he continues to quickly accelerate his growth curve throughout the course of the season. My sincere hope is, though, in doing that, it doesn't cost you more. Remember, he didn't play against Ole Miss, but when you look at his season grade so far, Weston Davis's season grade is a 39. His run blocking grade is a 41. His pass blocking grade is a 45. And Brian Kelly said that he did really good against 6, which is Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, but his pass blocking grade against Carolina was a 29.2. He gave up 3 hurries, 3 pressures, and committed a holding penalty. So I'm sure there's things on film they saw that they liked, but there's also things that were not good. They're going to stick with it. You heard him say it there. I mean, they're, as plainly as you could possibly say, they're sticking with Weston Davis at right tackle. I hope it's not to their own detriment. The good news for LSU is that the offensive line and the rest of the team continues to get healthier. One of the other things Brian Kelly touched on Monday was an injury update, including one that nobody asked about post-game. That's defensive lineman Bernard Gooden. You'll hear that update as we continue here. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. And we're brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU athletics. You see, trust isn't given, it's earned. And just like LSU athletes earn their success, Our Lady of the Lake provides and providers earn trust every day. And now, as LSU's championship health partner, Our Lady of the Lake, part of the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System, takes care of the Tigers on the field, on campus, and across Louisiana. Whether it's sports medicine, pediatrics, heart care, or helping you recover from everyday injuries, they bring championship-level commitment to every patient. You can trust the team that cares for the team you love. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. It's the same expert care trusted by LSU, ready when and where you need it. You can trust Our Lady of the Lake, just like I do. Learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU, ololrmc.com/LSU. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. As the game was winding down on Saturday, one of the tidbits that might have gone unnoticed, as a matter of fact, nobody asked Brian Kelly about it in his post-game press conference, was that defensive tackle Bernard Gooden was leaving the field without his shoulder pads on. As a matter of fact, didn't have an undershirt on or anything, just bare-chested, shirtless, was walking off the field. Looked like he was grabbing his hip, but as Brian Kelly clarified on Monday, it was not actually a hip injury, but it is good news.
Collarbone, bruised collarbone. Very sore right now, but clean, no break. So this is a short-time thing, and one where he'll have to manage the pain relative to how we go through the week.
You never want to hear of any injury, but the good news there with Bernard Gooden is that it doesn't sound like this is going to be serious. Now, as you look at the season for LSU, you continue to see a performance by Bernard Gooden that is quite honestly outstanding. He has been really your most impactful interior lineman. Now, his defensive grade overall from PFF is a 67.3. His interior pass rush grade is a 64, and he's played 222 defensive snaps. When you look at, by position, on the defensive line, who's played the most snaps, they've kept a really good rotation on the interior of the defensive line. But Gooden's 222 snaps are the most snaps by a defensive tackle. The next closest is Don McKinley at 168, Jacobian Guillory at 156, Ahmad Bro at 141. So you can tell Gooden is their best guy, their most trusted guy, and certainly their best interior pass rusher as well. So you are already a little bit shaken up there on that defensive front. Remember, you've lost Gabe Relaford for the season due to the shoulder injury. So that's one of your four defensive ends you're down. On Saturday, Jamari Butler went down with an ankle injury. Now, Brian Kelly clarified afterwards that it's not a high ankle sprain, and they expect Butler's going to be fine, which is great news because you saw really those defensive end reps pared down when Butler went out, and really they were just lying on Peyton and Pyburn. it just hasn't been a situation yet where you're seeing a lot of reps from Dylan Carpenter. He's only got 44 snaps on the season so far. Remember, in the last 2 games, you saw 9 reps from Carpenter against Ole Miss and 14 against South Carolina. So it's not like the free and fluid rotation you were seeing with the 4-man rotation when Relaford was in there. So now, being down Relaford, Butler was hurt but seems okay. Gooden on the interior would really weaken your interior defensive line if you remove the guy that's played the most defensive snaps. So clearly, the fact that this is not a serious injury is great to see, and we'll see if Gooden will be healthy enough to go on Saturday against Ole Miss. Now, Brian Kelly also ran through the rest of the injury recap on Monday.
Aaron Anderson looked good. We'll continue to progress with him. Caden Durham had, a hip pointer, which was mild, but one that affected him a little bit. He'll be fine. Braylon Moore had a stinger, but under control. We took an MRI. It looked good. Paul Mabenga is making progress. We expect him to be available this week. And Nussmeier had a slight ankle sprain, not a high ankle sprain, but a medial. And we feel like he's going to be fine. So,
fantastic news that you never want to hear that many injuries, but it's the course of a season. You're going to have them. Sounds like LSU is healthy for when they head to Nashville this weekend to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. And of course, we'll have you covered right here on Locked on LSU as we talk about it on Locked on LSU, your team every day. And of course, we'll keep you up to date with those injuries as we move throughout this week and as we know more and as we hear more from Brian Kelly. Hey, thanks so much for being here with us and for making this your first listen. We are headed to Nashville for the game. I'll be wheels up Thursday evening, and I'll be doing my radio show Friday in Nashville. So I'll be able to give you some perspective on the shows later on the week, my Friday and Saturday shows, as we lead you up to the game. They're from Music City and what the fans are like and what the whole ambiance and atmosphere is like as LSU gets ready to take on Vanderbilt. And it's just a massive opportunity for LSU this weekend. Interestingly enough, the Tigers were going to be a week ago before the game about a 3-point favorite, but the results of last week, Vanderbilt being idle, LSU struggling to get past South Carolina, shifted that. And you've seen a lot of the smart money come in on Vanderbilt as that line's moved up to 2.5. So we'll continue to watch that throughout the course of this week with our friends over at FanDuel and how that line might move as we get closer to kickoff on Saturday in Nashville. Hey, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks so much for making this your first listen every single day. If you are listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And please be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day.